Once upon a time, hidden deep within the recesses of TBR Mountain, there lied a special hidden chamber. A chamber that held all the most challenging books on my TBR. Those challenging books simply lurked, waiting for me to unlock that chamber. But in the words of the Sorcerer King himself, Ray Parker Jr.,
I ain't afraid of no guns.
I ain't afraid of no book. Hey, welcome back to BellTube. I'm Brian Bell. If you're brand new here, and yeah, we do have a lot of new eyes on the channel lately, today we're going to be talking about some of the more challenging books on my TBR and what it's going to take for them to move up closer into my schedule. And if you are brand new to the channel, we do a little segment each episode called One for the Road, where I offer a challenge or maybe a helpful suggestion that might improve your reading or get you a little bit more fired up to do something. Stick around for today's one. It's a quick one, but you might get some value out of it. So the impetus for today's video really came to me from some book mail that I received over the last week, and that was from author Janny Wirtz. She sent me the hardcover editions of her The Wars of Light and Shadow series, which has long been known to be a rather dense and complex read, and I started to think a little bit about what are some of the other reads that I have lurking on my TBR that for whatever reason I've either made an excuse or kind of kept it cramped down on the TBR, for lack of a better word, probably just, ease and wanting to have a little bit more escapism and easy reading. But I realized that there is some great value in some of these more complicated books and certainly the more complicated series. So today's video is going to be all about just that. What do I have on the TBR that might seem a little daunting, might seem a little complicated, but is probably worth the time to read? Because in Janny's own words, she had messaged me and we were talking about complex books, and she just said, they just really require focus. If you can focus, you can kind of get through anything should you set your mind to it. So let's start off today. We're going to talk about some of these books that I've got lurking in that chamber down in TBR Mountain. And the first series that we're going to talk about, I've actually already started, and that's Malazan Book of the Fallen by Steven Erikson. By the way, I don't have any physical copies today to show you, so you're going to see a lot of books sliding over my shoulder here through the magic power of editing, if I could do this correctly. But yeah, Malazan Book of the Fallen is going to be the first one we're talking about. I loved Gardens of the Moon, so I am the kind of reader that if you just want to kind of throw into the deep end and let me experience it for myself and try to sink or swim, sign me up. I really do enjoy that kind of a thing. It's a reading challenge, and this video is really about challenging books. So the next book up on my list is Dead House Gates, and I'm quite excited to read it. I've already moved it up to TBR. It's either going to be in June at the earliest or July at the latest. So all you Malazan fans that have been wanting me to really get my, teeth sunk into this series, it's happening. It's happening sooner than later. In the next 60 days, I'm going down the Malazan road. We're going to hit Dead House Gates. And I know a lot of people think that's the most complicated series that's out there. And it might be. I don't know. I have been told that Gardens of the Moon is, well, that's the easy one. Just wait till you get to the later books. Okay, bring it on. I'm ready for it. The next book that I want to share with you today, I have read the first installment, which was really, I think, originally supposed to be just that, a first series, and then move on to other things. But Gene Wolfe's publisher wanted him to do this follow-up book. Of course, I'm talking about the Book of the New Sun, which I've already read. And climbing up TBR's challenge mountain is going to be the Urth of the New Sun. Now, if it's anything like Book of the New Sun, I'm here for it. If you've watched this channel at all, I absolutely love that kind of stuff. And I think some of the publishers were suggesting to the author that, there are a lot of questions that are being asked of us and we don't know what to tell them. Could you write a follow-up book to the, Book of the New Sun sequence so people know how the story truly ends and maybe tie up some loose ends? So he wrote The Urth and the New Sun. Very excited to read it. That's the second book lurking on the challenging TBR list. Keeping on with that amazing author, Gene Wolfe, another series that I've been really looking forward to getting to, but yet I've allowed lurk hidden within the recesses of TBR Mountain, is a series called the Latro series. And the first book has been combined, really the first volume is combined into an omnibus called Latro in the Mist. But it's really, book one is called Soldier in the Mist, and the second book is called Soldier at Urth, or Soldier of Urth. I don't know what these books are about. I've heard they're about memory, that it would be a pretty fascinating concept for me because Gene Wolfe does explore quite a bit of memory in Book of the New Sun. I'm here for it. I hear it's kind of complicated. I hear it's a little difficult. Like I said, I'm all about that kind of stuff. So bring it on, Latro in the Mist. That might be coming up sooner than you think. Now, this next book on this list, I know a lot of you guys are going to be surprised that I haven't read it yet. And, you know, maybe you should be, maybe you shouldn't be. I don't know. It's been out since the 50s. Of course, I'm talking about the Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien, sort of the precursor, you know, history to the Lord of the Rings, to the Middle-earth lore. I don't know why I haven't read it. To be honest, when I was a kid, it seemed like a lot of work. It seemed overcomplicated for a ton of lore and backstory without as much adventure as Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. So it just really fell off my interest radar more than my this is too complicated radar. But you guys tell me, is the Silmarillion worth reading? Now, I know if Dr. Chase happens to be watching this video, he's already typing absolutely yes, read that Silmarillion in the comments. Very cool. So everybody besides Dr. Chase that's read the Silmarillion, is this something that I ought to keep on TBR Mountain? I don't know. I'm kind of interested in more of Middle-earth, yet at the same time, there are a lot of stories that I've never been exposed to. I guess what I'm asking you is, for those of you who have read it, is it worth advancing the Silmarillion up past some of these other series, either to just get it done or because it's that fascinating and unique? I'll let you guys tell me in the comments. Now, the next book on this list was written only about 20 years ago, sometime in about 2004, and I am talking about David Mitchell's book, Cloud Atlas. I know very little about this book. In fact, I didn't even know about it at all until I saw Jimmy Nuts over at the Fantasy Network, who's coincidentally coming on our show, For Whom the Bell Tolls, very soon. He was talking about reading Cloud Atlas and how it's sort of a series of connected stories that take place over space and time. I do think it's a fantasy book. I checked Goodreads. It is listed under the fantasy section, along with a few other categories, but I don't know what it's about, and I heard it does require a little bit of focus to put all the pieces of this puzzle together. That sounds pretty cool to me. So it's a relatively new addition to TBR Mountain's Hidden Chamber, but I'm interested in it. You guys tell me. If you've read Cloud Atlas, let me know in the comments what you think about it, and don't spoil anything, but let me know if you think I ought to move it up TBR Mountain a little bit, get to it sooner rather than later. I don't know much other than what Jimmy talked about, that there's kind of a lot of different characters because it is split up over time, yet it's only one book. So it's got to get done, I think, pretty expeditiously if it's going to happen. Cloud Atlas, it's sitting there lurking. Let's figure out when we're going to get it onto the schedule. Now, the next book that I want to talk about, I think it's just book one of a series. This is actually predating The Lord of the Rings. This is from the 1940s, and this is the Gormenghast series by Mervyn Peake. And book one is called Titus, Groan. I know next to nothing about this. I know my friend Evie over at She Was Only Evie has either read it or is currently reading it. I know she's a big proponent of it, specifically Titus, Groan. I don't know what it's about. I checked Goodreads this morning, and there's a lot of characters. They all have kind of unique names, which is not unusual for books that came out way back when. I mean, we're talking about 80 years ago. But I have to say, back in January, I did that DNF challenge, and, you know, I'll throw a little card up here if you want to check out some of the absolutely crazy books I read last January. But one of the books was called The Worm Ouroboros, which came from the 1920s and similarly had some crazy names in it. I don't know much about Titus Groan. It seems like it revolves around this giant castle and things are happening and generations of a family or multiple families are all in this castle. I don't really know what it's about. It didn't seem like the kind of easy, beach read that you might read in the summer. It looks like it belongs on this more complex list. You tell me. If you've read Titus Groan, leave it in the comments. Let me know what you think I'm going to think of it. And if it should be on the TBR, if it should remain hidden, locked away, or if it should move up the calendar a little bit. I'll let you guys let me know. Now, the next book on this list is a very, very recent edition. In fact, one of our patrons, Slay, mentioned it to me. And by the way, in the description, there is a link to the Patreon if you're interested in that. But he's really pitching me hard on R. Scott Baker's second Apocalypse series, specifically the first trilogy, Prince of Nothing, and I believe book one is called The Darkness That Comes Before. Now, I have been warned a little bit that this book is complicated, the series has lots going on, and it might be a little bit challenging to keep straight with a Malazan read ongoing. So my first inclination here is to do the second Apocalypse series, but probably wait till I get through at least Malazan, if not both Malazan and the Wars of Light and Shadow. So I don't know. Have you guys read this book? I know some of you guys are new to the channel and maybe this is a brand new series you've never heard of, or maybe you're brand new to the channel and it's your favorite all-time series. I have no idea. As the BellTube community grows, I'm getting a better sense of what some of our community members really enjoy in their readings. And when I look at people like Slay or like Jimmy Nuts with this Cloud Atlas book, and by the way, Jimmy reads some absolutely incredible books. If you're not already subbed to his channel, I'm sure you are, but I'll leave a link in the description to his channel too. I really know absolutely nothing about the author, R. Scott Baker. It looks like it's a cool cover, but we know about judging books by their cover. Where should this go, you guys, on TBR Mountain? Where should it stay locked away forever? Should it be gently unlocked and slowly released? Or should this thing cruise up the TBR schedule and do it right after Malazan? You guys let me know. So while those are some of the books that are on the kind of complicated, lurking, challenging fantasy book lists, they're not an exhaustive list. I do have several others, enough to make another episode of this. So if you guys want to see more of my fantasy book challenging types of reads that are still waiting for me, let me know, subscribe to the channel, and tell me, yeah, I want to hear more about challenging books. So let's talk about today's one for the road. And it's a short one, and it's a simple one, but I think it can be a very powerful one. And that is, I'd like you to take a look at your own TBR and see if you can identify at least one book or one series that you would classify as a challenging fantasy read. And if you can, where can you move it to your TBR schedule so you hit it sooner rather than later? In other words, is this a book that's just been lingering and lurking, waiting for you to unlock that special chamber so you get into this book? Let's see if we can move it up the list. And for those of you that look at your TBR and you don't see anything challenging on there at all, I guess my challenge to you is, how about putting one on there? Goodreads is great for doing that. Maybe something that I've mentioned here in my list. Like I said, it's not exhaustive. It's just about 7 or 8 books. But if any of those sound of interest to you, consider adding one of those to your own TBR. What I'm trying to do here is to try to get all of us here in the BellTube community stretching our reading a little bit. So yes, fantasy reading and science fiction reading, they're amazing escapes. It's one of the #1 reasons why I read the genre. But they can stretch our minds too. They can make us a little bit smarter. They can bring out new ideas and give us new perspectives to see, the world through. And some of these worlds that we get into, the more complicated ones, when we put the book down, there is a gained feeling of self-esteem that if you had a book that was lingering and lurking on your TBR that you finally finished and you understood a good chunk of it, Or even if you didn't, the fact that you finished it, that's a win. And we're all about compounding wins here on the channel. I look forward to hearing in the comments what you guys think I should move up the TBR of these listings. I look forward to knowing, are any of these books just awful and don't bother Brian and maybe kick them out of TBR Mountain to begin with? And again, you know, if you like these videos and you like these challenging lists and whatever kind of crazy creations I come up with, if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, I'd sure appreciate it. It does help the channel grow and new people can find us easier that way. In the meantime, have an awesome day, everybody. Here's your fortune.